Hi, hello everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching us from. This is Tribe O'Clock. I just want to say welcome to another episode of Tribe O'Clock. It is a privilege to be with you again today. And I just want you to know that today we'll be talking about heart health. The topic is guard your heart with all diligence. It is very important that we take care of our hearts. And then I have a very, very important person that will help us give us tips on how to guide our hearts. So here today we have Dr. Gbolahan Ogunbayo. You're welcome, Dr. Gbolahan.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I will like to say a little bit about Dr. Gbolahan this morning, or this afternoon, or this time. Dr. Gbolahan is a medical doctor of over 16 years of experience in medical field. He earned his medical degree from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. Great, Ife?
Great.
Yes. He had his residency at General Hospital, Rochester, New York, where he served as the chief resident. He had his fellowship in general cardiology and interventional cardiology at the University of Kentucky. He is board certified internal medicine and general cardiology. Now, hold on. Listen to this. He has a wide range of experience in percutaneous coronary intervention, cardiogenic shock, mechanical circulatory support, thrombolytic therapy for acute pulmonary embolism and peripheral vascular disease. I know your guess is as good as mine. Gbolahan is a heart doctor, let's just put it like that, and he's based in US. He's a Christian and is married with kids. So you can see that we are so privileged to have somebody that is worthy to wear this hat today, to speak to us about how to take care of our hearts. And I want to say thank you so much. He's a very busy man. I have to drag him out to be with us today. So thank you for sparing, some of your time to come and talk to us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think, anytime you get an opportunity to talk about what you're passionate about, you jump at that opportunity. So definitely, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Now, we might be asking, why are we talking about heart health? Why is it important to guard our hearts? We put it as guard your heart with all diligence. The Bible told us that in the book of Proverbs. It said we should guard our heart with all diligence because out of it flows the issues of life. See, that passage to me summarizes our essence of being here today. It's heart disease has been found to be the leading cause of death worldwide. Whether you are a man or women, whatever race, it is the leading cause of death. It causes 1 in every 4 deaths worldwide. That you say to me, that is one too many, right? In US alone, we have at least one person dying every 36 seconds from heart disease. It causes about 655,000 deaths every year. So you can see why it is very important to talk about this, because we're trying to reduce our death rate as much as we can to follow up with the WHO and CDC, guidance. So today we will just want to go ahead and start to talk about heart health so that we wouldn't waste too much of our time. So Gbolahan, this morning, you being a specialist in this area, we want to ask you one question. Can you please briefly tell us how heart works and the function of the heart?
Thank you for that question. So the heart, as we like to put it in our circles, is a pump. For the body to work well, the body needs nutrients. And the only way to get the nutrients to every cell When you eat, when you like your body absorbs it, it goes around, and the only way you can get everywhere and to be distributed appropriately is through that heart that is the pump, pumps oxygen and nutrients throughout the body. So obviously, if there's a problem with the pump, then we run into problems. The heart I like to describe as a house. The house has doors, the house has rooms, and the heart has electricity. The doors are 4 different doors that we talk about. There's a little bit more than that, but it's a little bit too complex. We call them the valves. And the valves open up from door to door. The rooms are the chambers of the heart, and there are 2 upper chambers and 2 lower chambers. And the electricity really is what you get for those of us that have ever had an ECG or an EKG. That is how the heart knows to pump. So if there's a problem with any part of this or any different forms or parts of this heart that I call the house, either the rooms, the doors, or the electricity, then you have a problem. And I think as today goes on, we'll probably talk a little bit more about those specific diseases.
Wow, that's awesome. I like the way you explain it, that explain the heart as a pump and the electricity. So we can see you as a plumber.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yes.
Gbolahan is a plumber. He's not just a heart, he's also a plumber and an electrician. So I hope that, helps us to categorize directly what the heart is and how it functions. So now, is it true that the heart is the most important organ of the body then, if it acts as a pump?
Well, I'm a cardiologist, so
What else do you expect?
My colleagues will probably beat me up if I don't say that. And like you started, like you referred to parts of the Bible. The Bible says there's every body part is important because every body part does something that the other part really cannot do. There are, however, some parts of the body that once you take it away, the body is more significantly altered. For example, if you have a problem with part of your intestines, they can cut part of it out, sew it and pack it up, and you'll probably be able to live a decent life. But if you have a problem with your part of the brain and they have to take it out, there's a big problem. Now, if you take the heart out, the body is pretty much functionless. Because when it boils down to it, a lot of times that people pass away, they pass away from something that has to do with an inability of their body to get nutrients, to get oxygen. And the only way to get the nutrients and the oxygen there is through the heart. So really, no one can live without their heart. Now, obviously, with technology, we have what we call artificial heart these days, and so on and so forth, which we may or may not get into in this conversation. But I would argue with anyone that the heart is definitely the most important organ, either selfishly or back in the valid points.
Thank you for that. At least now we know that you can go back to work and your colleagues will not cut your head off.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you that, heart is very, very important, to the rest of the body. And then I read somewhere that it says that the heart beats in 2.5 billion times in a lifetime. You can imagine your heart not stopping. Some people will say you can liken a heart to a clock, but the clock can stop. By the time you put in another battery, you can reset it. But if your heart stops, it's a problem. And you can imagine your heart keep beating every second. And that place says it beats 2.5 billion times in a lifetime. That is, to me, that's huge. And so we're amazed at the way that, our heart functions and help us to keep breathing and to keep walking and to keep doing what we're doing. The next question is, I've seen so many people when somebody, have sudden shock or something like that, the first thing they tend to do is to grab their heart or grab their chest. And I'm not talking about some movies they say do that, but in the real sense of it, when people have shocks, they tend to grab their heart. Why do you think this is the case?
I think, everyone, at least adults, they understand that, the heart is a very vital organ. A lot of times you talk about the heart in the human body, but then in the social scenes as well, you talk about broken heart. You talk about, when we're growing up, that guy broke her heart, this girl, heart, and so on and so forth. And so I think from the cultural perspective, when you're shocked, the first thing is, oh, my heart is broken for this person, broken because this happened. And the first thing you do is, just to grab at where at least, your physical heart is.
Yeah.
And at other times when people have a heart attack, actually feel a physical pain. We might be able to talk a little bit more about broken heart syndrome, which is not necessarily a heart attack, but pretends or gives us the same sometimes symptoms as you would have if you have a heart attack. And all that kind of results to someone clutching their heart or clutching their chest, and saying, oh my God, something like that. And figuratively, you could talk about it, but physically as well, it's usually a sign to let us know what is going on with the patient. Because sometimes you have patients that cannot, or their relatives who saw the patient go down, can't tell us a lot more than, he just looked at me, clenched on his heart, and he fell. And that gives us a sense that this might be actually a cardiac emergency, and we need to act fast.
That's really good to know. Thank you so much for explaining that. And I like the way you link it with our emotional feeling that, when you're going out with, someone and then you can refer to it and someone breaks your heart. And when you're going through something, the first thing you tend to do is to grab where you think your physical location of the heart is. So thank you for explaining that. And at the same time, it will be a symptom of what is going on. If you're having, pain in the chest, that might be a sign of you having a heart attack. Thank you for that. So let's now talk about, you've been talking about, maybe we'll talk about, some diseases or something that can go wrong with the heart later. So now I think this is the time. What are the things that can go wrong with the heart? If the heart is this big and this very, very important, it beats, 2 points over billions times every lifetime, what exactly can go wrong with the heart?
So like we broke down earlier on, that there are different parts of the heart. You have the rooms, you have the electrical part, and you also have the doors, which we call the valves. So starting with the rooms, obviously you can have a problem where the pump itself is not working. So you have something called pump dysfunction or pump failure. Now, the pump is not working, blood cannot get out. And if blood doesn't get out, nutrients cannot get to the body. And so the body shuts down. The things that could cause this could be because the heart itself loses blood supply. And that is what happens when you have a heart attack. So with a heart attack, the pump function of the heart is completely affected. And the heart can no longer squeeze out blood the way it should because part of it is dying. The other things that can affect the pump function that doesn't have to do with having a heart attack, you have other diseases that we call infiltrative diseases, like amyloidosis, in some cases, sarcoidosis. You have diseases that can kind of trap the heart and not allow it kind of open up and pump and squeeze the way it should. Restrictive and constrictive diseases. Those are a little bit they're not as common as having a heart attack. But certainly having a heart attack is something that, happens just in a flash, something that we could do things about and try to prevent, and something that we can actually treat and cure very well, given modern technology. The second part is the valves that I call the doors. As you know, sometimes the hinges of the doors of the house get loose, and so the door does not work well. So you can imagine if I'm pushing someone out of my house and I'm trying to lock them out, but if the door cannot stay shut, the person can easily come back. And so some people have heard of the terms called leaky valves. That is what I'm talking about. When blood is forced through a valve, it should stay on the other side. But sometimes the valve gets diseased and it starts to open up when it shouldn't. And the last part is the electrical part. And like both of us being from Nigeria, where we have, or at least used to have a lot of issues with electricity. When the electricity goes off, everything else in the house goes off. So in this case, you can have the stuff flickering in and out like that, in which case someone might have atrial fibrillation, where the heart rate goes up and the heart is not squeezing the way it should and it's just fluttering. And we can also have heart block, in which case the electrical system just shuts down and the person probably needs a pacemaker in order for their heart to start to function appropriately. So those are the different broad categories of things that can affect the heart. There's obviously a lot more that we'll deal with, but in a nutshell, those are the main things that could go wrong with the heart.
Yeah, thank you so much. I also love the way you describe the heart as a house. So things can go wrong with the rooms, things can go wrong with the electricity, and then things can also go wrong with the doors, which are the valves. Thank you for explaining that to us. So there's a question. My father has died of heart disease. How does my family history affect my heart health?
Thank you very much for that question. So, there's so many things that can affect heart health. And in our field, we like to divide them broadly into the things you can modify. So we call those modifiable, and the things we cannot modify, we cannot change, which we call the non-modifiable factors. Unfortunately, our family history and the things we inherit from our parents are some of the non-modifiable factors that can affect heart disease. I see patients a lot that tell me, I'm worried about myself. I'm in my 50s, and my father had a heart attack when he was in his 50s. My mother had a heart attack when she was in her 50s. My grandfather died of what we think was a massive heart attack. And so I'm worried. And I like to describe heart disease as a threshold that we all may or may not get to. And you see, all of us start from here. And what a family history of heart disease does is that it automatically increases your tendency and your risk of actually getting towards that threshold. So, a lot of people say, my dad smoked all his life, he never had heart disease. Why are you telling me to stop smoking? It's maybe they started from here. So when he starts to smoke, he gets here, but you have a family history of heart disease and you didn't have the opportunity of starting here. You are probably starting here. So any little thing you do may automatically put you above that threshold for having, a massive heart attack or some other kind of heart disease. And so your family history plays a huge part. When we were growing up, we used to get told about, stories of someone trying to get married and they send something in our culture they call alarino to go and find out about the other family, what kind of diseases they have and so on and so forth. And I think part of it is knowing that the family history of any type of disease, heart disease in this instance, plays a huge part in life expectancy and the risks of that person of developing heart disease as well.
Thank you so much. Now you talked about the other risk factors too. Can you please elaborate on the other risk factor, both modifiable and non-modifiable factors?
So some of the other non-modifiable risk factors is gender. We call it sex these days. And the male sex tends to have a higher risk of developing heart disease. We also talk about age. There's an adage in our country that says there's no old person in Ghana. That does not apply, unfortunately, to heart disease. We get, the more likely it is that we develop some form of heart disease or another. The modifiable disease risk factors are things that we, for lack of a better term, impose on ourselves or like bring upon ourselves. For example, our diet. For example, exercise and the lack of it. For example, our social habits, excessive drinking, tobacco use, drug use, and so on and so forth. And talking about drug use, I forgot to mention a huge issue with the valves as well that I talked about. The valves can be infected, diseases and things like that from drug use. So those are some of the non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors that we have to deal with. The diet obviously breaks down further into things like obesity, things like sleep apnea, where people stop breathing in their sleep and so on and so forth. Other diseases, big and huge, is hypertension. We know hypertension as the silent killer. It is still the silent killer. It is still one of the most common reasons why people develop heart attacks and other heart problems, other brain problems like strokes, diseases like diabetes. All those things are things that we have to start to think about in an early phase, especially if we have a family history, and start to treat and get under control. Otherwise, the writing is on the wall that many of these patients, if they don't and can't control some of these diseases, will end up on my cath lab table someday.
Thank you. So you mentioned diet. So my eating habits can affect my heart symptoms. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. In so many ways that, we wouldn't want to go too scientific into this, but your diet and the components of what you eat plays a huge factor in one's heart health. Know that people that eat a certain type of diet, we call it the Mediterranean diet, have lower risk of heart disease. We know that people whose diet composes mostly of processed foods have a higher risk of developing heart disease. And if you notice, when we were growing up, we did not have a lot of heart disease because we were mostly eating, organic food, organic diets, and so on and so forth. But all of a sudden, the penchant and the love for the Western diet came in. And so now we have a lot of people eating a lot of processed food, a lot of different types of diet, what we call McDonald's here, and so on and so forth. That invariably increases their risk of heart disease pretty significantly. So yes, we are what we eat. At the moment you start to change your diet, you might also change a lot of things in terms of your risk of developing heart disease at the end of the day.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So now my next question is it true that a small glass of wine, hi baby. Hello, it's good to have you here. Yes. Hi. So is it true that a small glass of red wine is good for the heart?
The issue of wine is akin to the issue of coffee. I tell my patients that, there's evidence in literature that red wine especially has flavonoids and things like that that might reduce the risk of heart disease. But I'm also quick to tell them that because you don't drink wine does not mean that you're increasing your risk of heart disease. And that what you get from drinking wine, you can get from other things without dealing with the, intoxicating effect of wine. As you know, some religious sects don't believe in the use of alcohol at all, and that does not necessarily increase their risk of developing heart disease. So in that regard, I would say, yes, they say that, having some red wine, maybe a glass once in a while, is not unhealthy. But if you could do without it and still live a very healthy life and not increase your risk of heart disease.
Thank you. So now, you've talked about all the things that can go wrong with the heart. And then the way you broke it down to things can go wrong with the valve, with the electrical aspect, with the rooms, with all that. So we understand that. But how do I know when to see a doctor? I mean, I wouldn't know if the door of my heart is faulty, for instance. So what will make me want to think, hey, this is the time for me to visit a doctor?
First of all, I think prevention is better than cure. I think taking care of yourself is probably the most important thing and gift you can give to yourself and your family. And when you talk about heart health, there are certain things that you would look for, or certain what we call symptoms that you might have that can point you in the direction of, say, I might have some kind of heart problems. Before you get there, however, I think if you keep the preventive aspect of medical care up, you might be able to avoid so many of these things. And sometimes people have palpitations, they don't count it as anything, but then they go to see their doctor and they're like, that's actually true. I've been feeling a little funny here and there. I've not really thought much about it, but now that I'm here, I might as well mention it. And that is how we get to catch some of the diseases. Now, some of the symptoms that could be worrisome and could point to having a beginning of heart disease is chest pain. Probably one of the more common symptoms that people complain about. You having chest pain does not necessarily mean you have a heart problem, but you also don't want to miss a heart problem if it is presenting as chest pain. The other things you can have, because the heart, supplies blood to every single part of the body. I can start from having, headaches, dizziness, lightheadedness when the blood supply to the brain is compromised in one way, shape, or form, or when the heart is racing so much that it can't pump as much blood up. You can have sweatiness. I've talked about chest pain. You can have palpitations. People can even faint. Fainting is one of the very common things that happen when people have one form of heart disease or another. Other things that you need to look for, shortness of breath. So when the heart starts to fail, when the heart is not pumping the way it should, blood invariably starts to back up. They may have shortness of breath, they may have nausea, some people might vomit, and some people might have swelling, mostly swelling in the legs. Some people might swell in every single part of their body. Those are some of the more common things that patients will present with. And if you have any of these symptoms, you certainly need to report it to at least your primary doctor. And if you have a heart doctor, you need to let them know, and they might need to run some further tests.
Thank you so much. I like the way you said that prevention is better than cure. So meaning that we actually shouldn't really wait till you start to have symptoms before you call on a doctor or before you visit a doctor.
Right.
Make it a habit to do your annual physical examination every year, even when you think you're healthy and you're okay and your blood pressure is okay. Because most likely, Gbolahan mentioned something. He said hypertension is a silent killer. And it is a silent killer because it wouldn't give you a warning sign. Most of the time, people that have hypertension don't have symptoms. They rarely have symptoms. And meanwhile, you'll be walking like a healthy, handsome guy on the road, and at the same time, your blood pressure is really, really high.
Yes.
So we all make it a habit to do our annual general physical examination that can be detected easily in the hospital. So basically, don't wait till you have symptoms before you say, hello, doctor. And at the same time, even when you're doing that, you should also watch for all the symptoms that he mentioned. Because sometimes at the point of visiting your doctor, that might not, you might not be, showing up those symptoms at that time. So I was able to tell us a whole long list of what to look for, starting from headache, dizziness, swelling of the leg. So look for all these things, even despite the fact that you're doing your physical examination, regular visits. Look for these symptoms, and whenever you see them, make sure you call your doctor. Thank you so much. That is really, really helpful. So now you talk about prevention is better than cure. Now tell us, how can I protect my heart? How can I maintain a healthy heart? What are the things I'm supposed to do to prevent heart disease?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question, and I think that like they say around here that an ounce of prevention is better than anything else. They say a pound of cure, I think.
Yeah.
First thing that we need to know about prevention is you need to know yourself. A lot of times, many of us don't pay attention to ourselves enough. And when you don't pay attention to yourself, obviously things can go wrong without you knowing. So if you know where you started, first of all, you will be able to follow anything that is going on and be able to check yourself when you know there's something wrong. Specifically now, I think the best thing you could do to prevent heart disease is to always check yourself out, like you rightly said, yearly physical, 6-monthly physical, however it is that you have it set up with your primary, probably the most important thing. The next thing that you want to think about is, okay, what are my risks? Know your family history. If your father, mother, or other first-degree relatives have suffered some form of heart disease or another, it should already put you on a high alert to say, well, I probably need to do a little more. The next thing is, let's start to think about those modifiable risk factors that we talked about. So that is where you can get the best bang for your buck. We talked about hypertension. So if you have hypertension, you want to control your blood pressure. If your blood pressure is not controlled, you're just knocking on that door to some other form of heart disease. If you have diabetes, you want to control the blood sugar. You want to make sure that you're taking your medications, you're compliant. If you have high cholesterol, you want to make sure that you do what you need to be able to get that cholesterol down. Sometimes losing weight and watching your diet, staying away from salt, and so on and so forth can help you control your blood pressure, control your blood sugar, control your blood cholesterol as well. And so those are some of the things that we need to start thinking about. Those are not the only things. I know skinny people that have heart attacks as well. But that is something that you can do to definitely reduce that risk. If you have any other, condition that you are not seeking help for, I know a lot of people, probably one of the most undiagnosed diseases in the world is sleep apnea, when they snore in their sleep and they stop breathing and they don't want to go for a sleep study. They don't want to use the CPAP machine, which may be a little uncomfortable. Those are some of the things that you could do to prevent heart disease. Making sure that if you don't have hypertension, you do things to prevent getting hypertension in the first place. So, eating right, exercising, getting enough sleep that many of us are very guilty of, resting and relaxing. Having a stressful job that makes you carry heavy loads is not working out. That is stress. You get home, You need to spend 30, 45 minutes to rest and relax, walk outside, and, leisurely and do things that make you happy. And obviously, for those of us that have a spiritual persuasion, it never hurts to pray for protection from deadly diseases as well.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy you mentioned something that, okay, so many things are coming to my head. Okay, so you mentioned something that you've seen skinny people that are having heart problems as well. So diet is very important, but that does not mean if you're not obese, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have your heart checked out. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't follow every other precaution. Don't say that, oh, I'm not obese, so I can continue smoking. I'm not at risk. So since I'm not obese, you still have to follow all these other preventive ways to get yourself healthy. Now, talking about that, when we talk about that and we talk about exercise at the same time, we've seen some people that are sports guys, they do sports, they do exercise, I would say, but they're still having, heart condition. Will you say that too much exercise is not good for the heart?
Well, that's a very good question. Also a very important question. Too much of everything they say is bad. But also, the wise man will say, you don't know what is enough until you know what is more than enough. There are some people that their job is and requires heavy workout. Those people have their own risks. There's something called spontaneous coronary artery dissection, which is a form of heart attack that might happen with strenuous activity. Now, that said, the heart becomes really, really conditioned when an athlete starts to work out a lot, or when anyone starts to work out a lot. And definitely their risk of heart disease is not as robust as that of those that are not that conditioned. But like I said earlier on, every single person has a different or a set threshold. And so, you're an athlete, it does not remove the fact that you have bad genes in the family. It doesn't remove certain things that you cannot control. And so your risk is still there. And I might also mention that it's not just, habits that increase your risk of having heart problems. There's some people that have viral infections, and the viral infection, weeks down the line affects the heart. And so even though you're an athlete, you're still open to have those kind of diseases. So yes, they're protected. Athletes are, and people that work out a lot, but it does not completely exclude them from having heart disease at some point or another in their life. So yes, while they work out and they do all these great things, they should not take other preventive measures and also regular checkups for granted.
Thank you. There's another question still along the same line as this that you just answered. We've seen healthy people that, have heart problems. Some of them even die suddenly of heart disease, they just slump and die, and they're, healthy people. What do you say? It's a contributory factor to this.
It boils down to those things that we don't know and can't see. For example, I'm sure many of us have experienced burst pipes before. Now, many of these pipes don't just burst. Most often than not, they start to get weak at a certain point over time. And all of a sudden, one day you're going past and the stuff just bursts open. And there's a litany of events that actually lead to that. The same way for people that have, heart disease, most especially having a heart attack or something that can stop their cut their life short, put it that way. I've experienced people that you look at them and they're the healthiest people ever, and they come in with heart attacks.
Mm.
Many years ago, I took care of a patient that was hiking and had a heart attack. I mean, for you to be hiking, you obviously must be in great shape.
Yeah.
And so you really can't completely erase or take away the risk of heart disease and make it zero. You could definitely make it better. Now, the good part for these people that are healthy and have heart disease is that they do way better than people that are not healthy, the same age, that have the same type of heart disease. And so while someone might say, some death is going to take me, so I might as well enjoy my life. Well, if you are healthy before you have a heart problem, you're definitely going to do way better than someone that was already unhealthy or had bad healthy or bad and unhealthy habits that had the same heart problem as the healthy person.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to throw some question in about medication. Okay, so the first one is I'm going to ask if it's okay to stop a blood pressure medication when your blood pressure, seems normal. And the another one along that side is I'm going to ask you, if my brother has high blood pressure and I'm having high blood pressure, is it okay to just share his medication rather than go to see the doctor and then having to pay? I mean, we're having the same thing anyways. We can as well share our medication.
Those are very, very important and pertinent questions. And thank you for asking those as well. Well, this is a question that patients ask all the time. My blood pressure is fine. Can I stop my medication? Those are the lucky ones. The unlucky ones are the ones that have a heart attack and tell you that they stopped their medication because they thought they were doing well.
Mm.
So, and the way I tell my patients when they ask me that question is the reason why your blood pressure is normal is because you're taking your medications. So what do you think will happen if you stop taking your medications? I say to them, if you don't like walking in the sun and you buy some sunglasses or some shades, you get comfortable walking in the sun. Now, if you say, well, I'm walking in the sun and I'm fine, now I can take my shades off. That's the reason why you're fine. So you got to keep it on so you can keep walking and enjoying the sunlight, and they get it. Now, there's some patients I would add that we have to take away certain medications from them because they're either having a side effect or because as they get older, they start to change certain things and their blood pressure is actually getting on the low side. Yes, absolutely. Those are the patients that we want to take some medications off. But please, 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 I'm begging you, if your blood pressure is normal, please do not stop your medications without talking to your doctor. And secondly, it's an absolute no-no sharing medications. That's like sharing your toothbrush. It's like, and there's so many reasons why you shouldn't. First of all, people react to medications differently. Even though they might be twins, their reaction to certain medications might not be the same. So you don't want to take a medication and hurt yourself in the process. You want to go see a doctor and you want to be able to talk about your symptoms, and they will be able to give you the medication that they think is appropriate for what you were talking about. So please, please, please do not share medications. Do not offer medications, do not ask for it, and do not give it.
Thank you very much. Now, this question is actually a very big, huge question. I'm thinking might need another, session for it, but I'm going to ask it anyways, just for you to say something about it. My child has a congenital heart problem and is being scheduled for heart transplant. What do you have to say today? What advice do you have for me?
Well, first of all, sorry about having to deal with, heart disease. Heart disease at any age is definitely not fun, but having to deal with a child with a congenital heart defect or malformation is got to be tough, not just for the child, but also for the whole family. And thankfully, with technology and with advancement in healthcare, we have heart transplants. And heart transplants is obviously reserved for the sickest of patients with heart disease, and is by far uh, one sure way of prolonging the heart of anyone that is lucky enough to have it. It's a huge privilege for anyone to actually be able to get a heart. And I look at it as two different ways, that's someone that has donated a part of their body because they want to preserve someone else's life. And there can be nothing as wonderful as that. And so to that person, I would say, nature and this person has given you another lease of life. Appreciate it, guard it, definitely embrace it, and congratulations on that. It's never a great experience to deal with heart disease at any age, like I said. But once you get that heart, you have to guard it, like you said, with due diligence and with all diligence. It might be a little difficult. You will need to take medications for the rest of your life to prevent rejection. You might need to go in a lot for a lot of visits, a lot of biopsies initially, and so on and so forth, but you have to keep the faith. Get good family support, get people of like minds. There are, depending on which hospital you go, groups that they have for patients that have transplants that you can join, go online and talk to advocacy groups and things like that. But it's certainly something that as much as may bring not so much joy to the family losing their loved one, but the joy that they can keep a life afloat by donating a part of their son or daughter's or father's body to continue someone else's life is something that I think is amazing.
Thank you very much. And I just want to use this medium to say thank you for everyone that heart donors and people that have donated heart of their loved ones, to keep the people like this going. You're doing a great deal help to the universe, and we want to say thank you for that. And just for whoever might be going through this at this time, see it as, a phase. And definitely, just like Gbolahan had said, just get good family support. Talk to some agency that can help you. Make sure you be in line with your doctor after the transplant, and then, everything will, it might be tough, like he said, but you go through it with all that. So now we move to our next question, and looking at what's going on around now, there's nothing we can say without talking about COVID. COVID is everywhere. It's almost like our new song now. I can imagine a new child born and saying COVID instead of doing the so yes. That's important now. So now, how does my heart health affect or impact COVID risk?
I think we can say that heart health can be affected by COVID, and COVID can also affect heart health. And there are, they merge at some point, but they're two different things. I've seen a lot of patients that were healthy, had COVID, and then they came in with heart failure. I also know that the risk of dying from COVID significantly is significantly increased when you have what you call pre-existing heart disease. Does that mean that everyone that has heart disease and has COVID will die? Absolutely not. But if you look at the curves that we have out there, obesity and hypertension and probably diabetes third are probably the three most important things that we have seen to affect that curve and in people that end up succumbing, unfortunately, to COVID infection. And so how it does that, we don't know for sure, but we know that people that have COVID are more likely to get really bad if they have one or more of those things. And after someone has had COVID, we know that, or when they have COVID too, we know that it can affect the heart. Some people come in with abnormal rhythms, they might need to be shocked out of it. Some people have what you call sudden cardiac death, where they have arrhythmias and the pass from that. Some people go into atrial fibrillation and the heart goes really fast. But either way, for patients that have COVID, you probably want to pay a little bit more attention to the symptoms you're having. Some of them might come in with palpitations, and that might just be the only thing they have. Even after COVID, you need to still pay attention to those things, because some patients come in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks after COVID. Some of them have blood clot in their lungs. Some of them come with heart failure. Some of them come with what you call sudden cardiac death or arrhythmias as well. So that whole spectrum during COVID and after COVID, you have to pay significant attention to your heart health.
Thank you so much. So, and being a father and a doctor, a plumber, and an electrician, all rolled into one, and especially in this pandemic period, what advice do you have for children to maintain their health? Especially for the fact that children has to stay at home a lot at this time, and then they're studying from home and all that. So what advice do you have for them, or for parents for their children?
Advice for parents is put your kids to work. let them be the ones to wash the dishes, cook the food, run around the house, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a challenge, and it's a very important question and topic to talk about. I think over 70% of my even adult patients have gained weight because of COVID. They're inside the house, they cannot go to the gym, they're even scared to go to their neighbor's house. In some parts, the government has told them to work from home. And so what all they do is they eat, they sleep, they Netflix and chill. And we know that when people eat and they don't use the calories up, it's like making money and not spending it. It accumulates in the bank, and in this case, it accumulates as fat. And the same thing with children. Children are very active, and if they don't get active, obviously, just like adults, they'll gain weight. And so people have to start to create healthy habits. People have to start creating routines at home that include some form of exercise or another. Christmas, I got my girls, I got them Fitbits. And so they all wear Fitbits, and they got into competitions among each other who can get the highest number of steps. So it's a very smart way of getting them to move. Because I go to work, so obviously I have probably 10,000 steps a day. So I come back home and I show them, like, you're slacking. You gotta get running around the house trying to get stuff done. And the same thing for us as adults as well. I know in the time of COVID, a lot of gym equipment went up in price because a lot of people set up home gyms. I don't know if I can turn this around. This is almost like a makeshift home gym for the family. Oh. That's a little bag there. It's in the home office that when you have sat down for a little bit, you have to get on and try and use up some of those calories. For children, it might be a little tricky, but intelligent ways of making them to work. Walking around with them, for those of us that have good weather, getting them to take the trash out, and so on and so forth, and ways to get them to do stuff. Another way is to change their diet. So if you give them a diet that is not too rich in carbs, more vegetables, more protein, less fat, might be a way to change their diet even for the future, not increasing their carb intake for kids and adults as well, while still giving them what you call the balanced diet they need to be able to develop well. I think is the way to go.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thanks for sharing that with us. So
Yeah.
we know about Fitbit, we know about home gym, we could see yours. We know about putting our kids to work. That's very, very important. Giving them something fun to do, let them cook. They all want to get involved in that, and that will really help. And making them go into some form of competition if you have more than one, and that will encourage them to keep moving and to keep healthy. And we as parents, we have to watch what we put on the table for our kids. And then most especially, you know, when they go around, walk around pre-COVID time, if they eat ice cream, they run it out. But now they eat more. So we have to be very, very mindful of what we put on the table for them and what we use as snacks.
And also, very importantly, that is said that, you know, at some point our kids are monkey see, monkey do.
Yes.
So when they see us do things, I mean, there have been times where my 4-year-old, and it still happened this morning, I think I put her picture on my Instagram, you know, I was doing my little workout in the morning and she joined me. You know, I had my first daughter, who is almost 13, join me upstairs in the bigger gym to work out. So, you know, when they see us parents do these things, they tend to imitate us and want to do these things as well. And if we tell them, you know, you got to go out running, the smart child will be like, but daddy, you are not running. You know? So, if we want our kids to do something,
I can relate with that.
yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Last question before we round up this session. You mentioned something about broken heart syndrome. I'm really interested in that. I know most of our viewers will be interested in that because we talk about he broke my heart, she broke my heart a whole lot. And for you as a cardiologist to now tell us about broken heart syndrome, what exactly do you mean by that?
So the $20 phrase for broken heart syndrome is what you call Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, because it was one of the first people to describe it was that person. It can also be called stress cardiomyopathy, and cardiomyopathy just means the cardio is heart and pathy is like pathogens, is like disease. So cardiomyopathy is just disease of the heart. What happens is with stress, with something like a bad event in this part of the world, it could be something like, you know, you lost your spouse or you lost your dog. I mean, and this is real story, you know, you lose your dog and you're stressed out, you're unhappy. Sometimes immediately, a few days, a few weeks. After that, after the event, it could be loss of a child or loss of a job. You will, or you might actually have symptoms that are very classic of having a heart attack. Sometimes you suddenly develop shortness of breath. And we do something called an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound picture of the heart, and see that the heart is actually now moving right. It's due to a sudden surge of what we call catecholamines, which are just different hormones in the human body that affect how the heart functions. And so the heart literally gets weak and does not pump well. Those kind of people, you think they have a heart attack, they have everything that suggests they have a heart attack. You take them to the cath lab and you don't find any blockage. And when you do this test using the ultrasound, you see that the heart has a particular squeeze pattern, a particular squeeze way it squeezes, that you know that this is because of stress, this is because of a broken heart, this is because of something that made them unhappy and gave them this particular disease. These patients do well. We put them on certain medications and they do well over time. We have to treat them just like their heart failed or just like they have a heart attack in some cases. But with time, we repeat that ultrasound and we find that their heart has gone back to normal. And we have to continue to monitor those patients to be sure that they don't develop anything like that again. much more common in older women than in any other group of people, but it can affect anyone. So something to always remember and put at the back of our minds when a patient has had an unfortunate event and all of a sudden starts to manifest symptoms of either heart failure or heart attack.
Wow, that's really, really good to know. That's eye-opening. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
On this note, we will be rounding up. But before we round up, Gbolahan, do you have something like a parting word for us, something to round up the conversation with?
I think, we should end it the way we started it. Like you said, guard your heart with all due diligence, because out of it comes the issues of life. I think we know very well that nothing works well without the heart. And if you have that opportunity and you've been blessed with a good heart, like we all have mostly at the beginning of life, as we get older, you need to take good care of it. If you take good care of your heart will take good care of you.
Good. Thank you very much. I like that. If you take good care of your heart will take good care of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for sharing out of your wealth of experience.
Yes, ma'am.
Thus, I thank everyone that's joining us live and people that will be listening to this. Just like you rightly said, we should learn to guard our heart with all diligence. With everything that you have, make it a priority. Set up your appointment with that doctor. Talk to someone if you're having symptoms. Don't keep quiet. In Nigeria now, we say it's okay, right? So you have to find out if you know you're going through something. This is our plea. This is what we are here to throw out today so that we can live a happier, healthier lives, longer in good health. So this is Tribe O'Clock. Tribe O'Clock is a Christian organization that is set up to help us all thrive by sharing some health tips and all that with everyone. So usually we invite professionals in fields to come and teach us what to do and how to do them and where to get resources from, just like we did today. So we've said today that out of our heart shows the issues of life. So in Tribe O'Clock, we are trying to live life well, to live beyond just surviving, but to thrive, to prosper in everything we lay our hands on. And I wish you all a very, very beautiful time as you bloom, and blossom in life. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Gbolahan.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.